Welcome to the Carpool Chat, from our house to the State House, the commute that nobody ran for. I'm Representative Sarah Stalker, and today I'm joined by my colleagues, Representative Rachel Rorix and Representative Tina Bojanowski. The three of us regularly carpool from Louisville to Frankfort, and we thought it would be great to have you join in on some of the conversations that we have back and forth. I think the most important thing to talk about this week was the fact that we had a 3-hour commute, which is not normal. How long does it normally take us to get here?
45 minutes.
Yeah, 45 minutes, but what happened?
So there was a major single vehicle accident. It was a tanker truck, and I understand there was a fatality, unfortunately. But what happened is at exit 35, everyone was taken off the expressway. And so our interns, who happened to use their GPS on their way to Frankfort, followed their GPS and did it. We, who go every week and every day to Frankfort, just went on and got stuck in the traffic. So our moral of the story is that even if we know exactly where we're going, it's pretty handy to put the GPS on in case there are any delays.
Yeah. Definitely a new protocol for us, not because we don't know where we're going, but in the event we could have gotten off on exit 32. That could have saved us a significant amount of time.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it did give us longer to chat.
It did.
And we streamed a committee meeting while we were going, so that was productive use of our long commute.
We do. Right. We make every minute count. Talking specifically about policy, let's do a recap of something we talked about in our last episode, which was House Bill 312. So that was passed out of committee, and we were anticipating hearing it on the floor. And we did. We heard it, and this was
on Friday.
Yeah, on Friday. And so the vote for that was 73-17. And just as a recap, Rachel, do you want to talk about what this bill was?
So essentially, it lowered the age of when you're legally allowed to conceal carry down from 21 down to 18. So if you're an adult, you can now, if the bill will pass the Senate and get signed into law by the governor, if it passes the full process, then that could potentially allow for 18-year-olds to be able to conceal carry legally. So I was not actually in on Friday. I had a doctor's appointment, so I cast my vote later, and I did end up voting no, so that did change the final vote total, but it's not going to show up on the main screen. You have to look for it in a different place.
Right, and I think it's important to know, 18-year-olds, their prefrontal cortex is not all the way developed. So there was a lot of argument that 18-year-olds are adult, and the statement was made that it was our constitutional and God-given right to carry a weapon once you're 18. On a slightly positive note, this bill does require a background check and training for an 18, to under 21 to conceal carry, which is not required for anyone 21 and older. So hopefully, the bill will pass. We will not be able to block this bill from passing, but hopefully those individuals would then have the training and the background check that would make us safer once they turn 21 and conceal carry.
I agree. I was also a no on this, but I did appreciated those provisions, because if we are going to give people the ability to conceal carry at earlier ages, we do want to make sure that they have the proper background checks and training. So,
and it also does spark another debate too about, when we do regulate for health and safety reasons, why something might be a 21 age minimum versus 18. And so I think it did really spark a lot of those conversations of, again, what other things are regulated at age 21, and are young people asking for this bill, or is this just a consistency thing? Like, where does this come from? And from my students that I regularly hear from, this is not something that they were interested in.
Yeah, same. And nobody was. I always said our young people need a lot of things, and this is not necessarily something that's helping them in a way that's meaningful and that is current with what their struggles are for current day, right? Yep. So. We also had today House Bill 84, which was heard on the floor. We all three were a no on this.
No, I was a yes.
You were sorry. Yep. Yeah, I'm sorry. We all three were a yes. Excuse me. There were 6 no votes is what I meant to say. Tina, do you want to talk about what this bill did?
Okay, so there already was in statute a law that said that if there is a riot in a municipality, that it would be the responsibility of that governing body to offset the damages that might occur. However, because the phrase for Louisville is a
Consolidated
local government, because that wasn't specifically stated in there, Louisville and Lexington were the only two cities that were not required, per our Supreme Court, to be responsible for a riot, damages from a riot. So this bill effectively just changes that language to further define local government, so it's all the governments in the state, which is really non-problematic. What could be concerning is, number one, my concern is we've got all these situations where federal government is coming into states, and what if our local law enforcement are blocked from preventing something like this happening by the federal government, by the local, the federal government blocks them, who would then be liable? And so that's a question I had that wasn't really, so it gets tricky sometimes when we're debating on the floor, because this bill is already in law.
That's
so
right.
Debating the essence of the bill is sometimes what happens, but it's not really what the bill was proposing.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a tricky situation. So yes, I support all cities having the same responsibility, but if we get into the question of riots and how do you define a riot and who decides what a riot is, that's not what this bill did, but it was questions that we had.
Yeah, and let me tell you why I don't like these types of bills. It's for that reason alone, because the language itself, when you're looking at just the language and what changes were proposed, it's literally changing one word from city to local government.
Right.
Right? So everything else, to your point, was already in law. It was already in statute. But a point that was raised on the House floor was part of our job is if we're going to go back and make some clarifying language, we really should have the responsibility to look at all of it, right? To say the reality is that we are in a very different time right now in 2026 as far as what's happening, and I think anybody who's not willing to say that is not being honest.
It's true.
About what's happening. And so that did bring up a lot of questions on the floor, and to your point, whose responsibility is, does that give us the control that we actually need to protect our citizens? Can things be used against us? What even is the definition of how many people does it take to be considered a riot, right? There was all these, right,
five.
which is 5. But there's lots of questions like that were really valid that were brought up today on the floor. And it does get tricky because you also never know how the media is going to portray this type of bill, and so I think there's arguments on both sides. Right. But we all were yes on this, and there were 6 no votes for some of those reasons.
And then to clarify too, so Louisville is an consolidated local government, but Lexington is urban county government, and so those two phrases and others were added into House Bill 84. But Louisville Metro is the only consolidated local government, which also comes up from time to time on bills.
Yes.
So it's an important thing to know that you wouldn't necessarily think of if you weren't doing this work.
That's right. So last week we talked about readings and kind of how bills will move through that process and the fact that they need 3 readings. I think what it would be helpful is let's back up things a little bit more and talk about when constituents reach out to us, because that's something that we discuss as far as when folks reach out to us about opposing a bill, supporting a bill. How do you all typically get contacted by people, and then how do you organize that information and use it to inform your decisions on a vote?
I'll go ahead and start. So we get kind of two ways that we get messages. One is in the phone call, and you call the legislative message line, and you leave a message and you say, I support HB 84. And then I'll get a message. We call them a green slip. And did you know that in the past there were red slips?
I did.
So green slips were for, red slips were against, and then it just became green slips. So they're called green slips, but now it comes in another system. It's kind of one of those words that sticks around.
And I think it's important to say, because this did happen when Rachel and I both came in. they would literally be printed on a green slip.
paper.
Because I've had people say, like, why is it called that? And,
Right.
and I would say it was, but now they do not do that because we've moved to an electronic system. And so things are
So
captured
we
on-
get phone calls that you call the message line and they leave a detailed message or just your support or non-support for a bill. And then I also get emails. And then what I do is I'm lucky enough to have an intern from the University of Louisville this year. And then I have my intern tally all of those messages. So our internal system is not quite able to do that yet. You would think in this day and time maybe we'd get close to that. But we just do a physical tally so that if a bill that I'm not sure where my constituency stands, I can look and see where did members of my district express support or non-support for a specific bill, and then that helps me and guides me in my voting decision.
Yeah. What about you, Rachel?
Well, I think it's important to clarify too, there's different types of emails that we receive, and some get
that's
more
true.
attention than others. And this is like a pro tip that I like to give to people. I am so glad when anybody takes that step in advocacy to call and express their opinion. Even if you're just reading from a script, even if you sent a form letter, which is something that you click on and it automates a message and sends it to my email, I'm appreciative. However, what gets more of my attention, because I can only read the same exact message so many times, is when you actually choose to engage with me by writing me as a constituent, Dear Representative Rourke, Dear Rachel, I want to tell you about this issue that concerns me. Here's what I think this bill would do, here's the issue I'm concerned with, and here's how to contact me. I will actually reach back out to you to let you know where I stand on that issue, if I have concerns or questions that I'm looking into. Like, I'll have a conversation with you at that point. If you're going to send me the form letter, we found that people don't often, even if I do respond to them, people don't often respond back. There's just lower engagement with those. And so, like, I do actually want to hear from you, and I want to have a dialogue and a feedback about it. So if you take the time to write me a message or call and leave me a voicemail on my direct line, like, I will get back to you, and I appreciate you calling. So please, like, always think about that. And also, yeah, human nature thing. I think people get really excited about something they're passionate about, and sometimes they really want to. You're my constituent, and you want to demand change. The word demand sometimes is very off-putting. I think it's actually just a psychological thing. I just want to be treated with respect and kindness. Like, assume positive intent that I want to do the right thing. And so when you call me and say, like, hey, Rach, like, this really concerns me, I'm going to listen to that. Now, when you call and say, like, I demand that you do X, Y, or Z, there could be a myriad of reasons why that might not be possible, or there might be more to it that you haven't considered yet. So please, like, view it as a conversation and a dialogue. I'll be much more receptive to it, and that's a tip for literally anyone. But I also understand the passion and your right to, demand better of your legislators. I get that, but I think it's just that human nature quality.
You, Sarah?
Yeah, so I am somebody who goes through my email with the assistance of my legislative assistant as well. So some people just have their legislative assistant deal, with all of their communications, and they're not as hands-on. It's a combination of both, just because it's a capacity issue for us, right? We have one person who is assisting us, and not just us. We share them with other legislators, is what I always tell people. So capacity challenges are real, but my preference is I love it when people will send me a real email. And when I say real email, here's really what I mean. I mean, whether you were sitting down to your computer and you were typing it just literally from your email account to my email, or if you are using the portal. So if you go onto the LRC's website, every legislator has a bio page, and you can contact your legislator through that as well. And so that's one way of doing it. Either way is incredibly helpful, and to flag for me that you are my constituent. I think I would tell people that all of the time when you reach out, make sure you say I'm your constituent, because that's going to make people sit up and pay attention a little bit more than if you're just somebody who you might be across the state, you might not even be in the state, right? You might just be watching what's happening. So I think that makes a huge difference. I also sometimes will get physical pieces of mail from people, whether they're postcards or letters on particular issues. So I read those. I think that's helpful. And I always tell people, again, to the form letters, I know they're very easy ways and low hanging fruit for people to take action. If there's advocacy groups that people follow that will send out those messages and say, hey, contact your state representative, it's very easy for them to kind of hit that button, fill in their information, and it gets over to us. but it just doesn't have the same, impact. So I always tell people, even if you're going to use that, try and customize it. Customize
Right.
the subject line. Customize, if there's a story in there, please include that. And
Let me add here, I mean, if you are interested, each of us does an e-newsletter. So you can, on our bio page, you can find an e-newsletter sign up, and if you contact the LRC, all your information is in there, but we're not allowed to send you an e-newsletter unless you opt in. So if you're interested in, if we are, or maybe if we're not, because mine send to people who aren't my constituents as well. If you're interested in hearing updates for us in our newsletter, we don't cover everything in the Carpool Chat. You can sign up for that there too.
Yep, that's a really good point. So what about the focus for this week? What are some things that you guys heard in committees or bills that you want to talk about?
Well, I had some exciting news. I became the ranking minority member for local government, which is a new position that has been added. So on that committee, we had a bill this week, House Bill 276, which was related to backyard chickens. And it was saying that the state, like all across the state, unless you're in a homeowners association or somewhere deed restricted, you could by right have up to 6 chickens. And I'm sure local government can come in and say you could have more, but it even doesn't matter, urban, rural, like you could have at least 6 chickens. And right now, I believe in Louisville Metro, it is 5 chickens and a rooster is allowed on kind of your typical lot in the city. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I voted against it because I felt like it was more of a local decision. I've experienced a lot of chickens getting out. How do you track them down? Whose chicken is this? I love the chickens, don't get me wrong.
How many people can say that? I have a lot of experience with chickens getting out. And not because she's the owner of them, but because when she used to work
chase after them
for the city.
I got some calls from neighbors. We don't know whose chicken this is. They're on the loose. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with that.
Right.
So there's some chickens on the loose in a particular area. You should ask me about it if you ever see me out.
And I'm glad that the bill specifically didn't include roosters, because I had a neighbor with a rooster maybe 3 doors down, and you could hear that rooster, and it crowed sometimes when I wanted to be sleeping. So,
well, as I was told, roosters, they don't just crow in the morning; they crow for love, and they always want love. So they crow at all times of the day. But I think my father-in-law called me and he goes, "Rachel, I heard you talking about that bill, and I heard they quoted you saying that you love a good quality egg."
That's right.
And I was like, I was just trying to be polite. Like I love farm fresh eggs, but I think this
and I cannot vote for this.
And I think local government should be the one to regulate this, not the state.
Yeah. How about you, Tina?
So I was really excited this week because House Bill 389, we talked about this, I believe, last week, is a bill regarding dyslexia, and it passed through the House unanimously. So what the bill does is it requires the Kentucky Department of Education to add dysgraphia and to update the dyslexia toolkit. And it also has something that I've been advocating for several years, and that's kind of what happens, right? So you have something that you want to advocate for, and it takes a couple of years, and sooner or later, if it's good policy, it may be involved or included in something. But this was to change school boards, instead of saying you may have a dyslexia policy, that the school boards shall have a dyslexia policy. So that difference between may and shall will be the difference between one school district having it, which is the situation now, and 171. And just one other note, so thinking about words that are important in legislation, it took me a few years here until I truly understood the meaning of the word notwithstanding. Mm-hmm. And that word notwithstanding means ignore other statute. Mm-hmm. So that one for me was a learning process. It was a word that wasn't really in my used vocabulary, but it's a really powerful word when you see it in statute.
Absolutely.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. So I'm on local government as well. It's interesting because we have different perspectives. I typically am somebody who says, yes, I always want to look for, local control, but I voted for the chicken bill because I think when you get into people who are trying to produce food for themselves, and there was a specific call out about that you cannot sell from your home, right? That this is just for your personal family's consumption. You cannot sell the eggs. That we need to be careful about that. So if people want to be able to grow their own food and have their own eggs and supply for themselves, I think that is important. Another bill, we heard a lot of different bills in that committee on varying topics, but one that I thought was really important was the fluoride bill. So this is House Bill 103, and this conversation, I think they said, has been going on for about 9 years.
Yeah.
So before my time for sure. But this fluoride bill did pass out of local government, and this is not just about removing fluoride at large. So the clarifying point to make in this bill is that this would give local control for those water districts to say, do we want to add it or remove it? I'm against this, and you may have more to say about this as somebody who's worked at the city level, but I'm against this because fluoride is your first line. Fluoride in the water is a first line defense, right? And as somebody who had a lot of kids in my home as a former foster parent, never did we not have to address oral health care, right? And so you get kids, we have a lot of poverty in our state to begin with. We have a lot of deserts, healthcare deserts, when it comes to oral health care. Even in Louisville, I would have to find a dentist who would be willing to take Medicaid for the kids that were in my care, so that we could make sure they had their teeth cleaned and if there was a cavity and things. And that was something I always tried to attend to. But this gives different counties the ability to decide if they want to keep it in or out. But I think it gets really messy when you're starting to deal with a lot of years of data that have support the health, the positive benefits of fluoride. But what do you all think about that?
Well, I'll start. So I think for me, it does come down to, it has been proven safe and effective. If for some reason you have done your own research and for your own reasons have decided that you do not want to be drinking fluoride or you don't want to be having fluoride in your toothpaste, I feel like that's a personal choice. And it's only it's relatively inexpensive overall. One-time purchase of about $100, which is a choice that you can then make to then buy a filter and remove fluoride if that's something that you need to do. It is much more safe and effective for us to, as a local water district, to add it, and then if, again, an individual wants to remove it, then for it to be removed, as opposed to, there's really not going to be a good way for, let's say you wanted to have it in your water, for you to add that back. So for me, it really comes down to the ease of what that access would be, and I do believe that it's safe and effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that Louisville, Tina, would remove fluoride, or do you think they would keep it?
I mean, my guess is that they would keep it. I'm going to share because I have a slightly different lens on this. So I have a child with autism, and in my path of raising my son with autism, I've met so many very intelligent people, and I have one friend who has done extensive research into this issue of fluoride in the water. And I haven't read her research, but I trust her implicitly, and so I will support this bill. And I may be the only person in my caucus who does so, but there are some friends who you just trust so implicitly, and she's a nurse by training, and so she has that medical lens. And I think, for my kids, we use fluoridated toothpaste. That's just, I'm not going to go way in depth about it, but that's why I will support the legislation.
Yep. Very good reason. Sometimes we don't always agree on the bills that we vote on. Okay, so that being said, let's move into personally what is going on. What do you have to report, Rachel?
What do I have to report? So I often get kind of made fun of in my personal life about, I'm like, oh, what are you doing for fun this weekend? And I'm like, work. I have a couple of local town halls and a meeting that somebody asked me to come and talk about the road plan at, and they actually are asking some pretty in-depth advocacy questions about how do we get more involved in our state highway projects, and what can we as citizens do? And there's a lot of opportunities for elected officials to be involved in those processes, but there is really opportunities for community depending on at what point in the process we're at or if elected officials bring them in. So it's going to be a really fun conversation. As you know, I'm a big dork. I love roads.
Absolutely.
So I get to talk all about roads tomorrow, actually, and then also get to answer constituents' questions at Cafe Louie, so I'm excited about that. And then when I do finally relax at the end of the day, I'll be reading the third housemaid book. I have made it. The Snow Mageddon at least allowed me to get caught up on my reading. So I'm on book 3. I'm enjoying it much more. But I think mystery isn't always my favorite thing, but I'm getting through it.
Let me ask you about, you mentioned something that some of our viewers may not be familiar with, which is Cafe Louie.
Oh.
So this is really something that's really specific to Louisville. No other cities that I'm aware of do this. But this is a partnership that we have with our library system where folks can come in every month that
And
we are
it's
in
bipartisan.
session. It's bipartisan. Every library in Louisville participates. And so I know there's 2 different library locations that I go to that are in my district. But it's a wonderful opportunity for people to meet their elected officials, and it's at all levels, right? So you have Metro Council individuals that are there, us from the state. We've got also our senators from the state as well, and sometimes you'll even have in Louisville, it's Congressman McGarvey because he represents all of Louisville. So he's also known to pop in at those as well. And I tell people they're fantastic opportunities. You don't have to, if you just want to sit back, drink your coffee and eat your donut and just listen, that's fantastic. And sometimes people just want to put a face and a name. If you want to listen to the questions or you have a question, they'll take them. They're facilitated. They're done really thoughtfully and well. And I think they're great opportunities for people to get in.
It's bipartisan in the sense that like the panel is bipartisan, but the nonprofits that run the meeting are nonpartisan.
Yes, that's important. Yeah. How about you, Tina?
Oh, lots of shoveling.
Yeah.
We shoveled my driveway, my daughter's driveway, my mom's driveway, my driveway again. I was a little disappointed because I love snow, and the thought of 12 inches was just like, oh, that would be really cool. But then as I started shoveling and see the piles, I'm very grateful that it didn't hit us as badly as it could have. I've been watching the newest episodes of the show The Doc and The Pit. Actually stayed up a little later than I wanted to last night because I wanted to watch the release of The Pit. And I'm reading the 3rd book. So there's a show on Apple TV called Slow Horses, and I'm reading the 3rd book in that series. And that is a show about British intelligence, like MI5, I think they're called. And these individuals in what they call the Slough House are kind of the rejects from the big boys' intelligence. And so the storyline is kind of intriguing. And it's, once again, as I dial down for my day and, try to just get my mind off of everything, it's a good escape book.
I like that. What about you, Sarah? What are you doing for fun?
Well, so I have a show that I've been watching with my husband and my daughter. It's called High Potential. And that's fun for us to watch together. We're solving crimes, but you've got this main character who has this very high aptitude and IQ to be able to come in and solve cases, and so she becomes this consultant that they bring on to their team. And so she's not a police officer, but she just has a way of noticing these details and connecting the dots, and she's got a great sense of humor, and it's cast really well, and I'm really enjoying that. And then when I'm done with that, I am now starting to get myself into the habit of not being on social media. And I forced myself, in preparation for the potential snow that we were going to get, went to my library to get a couple of books in the event that we completely lost power. But now I'm just trying to read a chapter a night, and then go to bed, and not let my brain continue to go. And it really does help me just wind down and put me to sleep at a reasonable time. So I'm grateful for that, because anytime you can wake up before your alarm goes off, not too early.
Right, no, that's happened to me a couple days.
We don't want it to become problematic, but if we're talking 30 to 15 minutes, that's also really nice too. So that sounds good. Well, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the Carpool Chat. That wraps up this episode. We hope to see you next week.
Today's episode is sponsored by GPS. Use it or get stuck in 3 hours of traffic.